Hello everyone, welcome to Easel Live. I know it's been a little bit since the last time we did an Easel Live with everybody, so thank you. We had a great summer break. I hope everyone else did too. And the good news is we're coming back this Easel Live with some really cool stuff to share with you. So not only are we gonna make a project, but we are going to announce 3 really very cool, brand spanking new, they just went live this morning, features in Easel. So our developers have been working on these features for quite some time based on a lot of the feedback that we've received from our community, from our forum, from people reaching out on social media, talking to us about things that they really want to see in Easel. So some of these features might be things that people who have beta tested our features have seen before, but we are really proud to finally get them out to the public. Thank you for everyone who's contributed feedback, questions, concerns, comments. All that stuff has really helped us test these features and get them in a position where we can now bring them to the whole wide world on Easel for free forever. So without further ado, the 3 features that we will be announcing today. The first is 2-stage carving. The second is high definition preview in the 3D preview pane. And the last one is toolpath animation. So you can actually track the exact toolpaths that your machine's gonna make. Why are these so cool? Well, they really will help people get a better sense of how to use their machine, how to design projects in Easel, and also to really get a crisper understanding of how your machine moves and how you can make sure that your project looks correct. Now, 2-stage carving is a really cool feature because it allows you to use 2 different kinds of bits, a roughing pass and a detail pass, which means you can use it on projects where maybe you have a really deep pocket, but you also have detailed design, or you want to do a cutout with a larger bit because it'll take a faster amount of time. But you also have like there's a lot of detail going on in the middle part that maybe you want to use like a 1/16 or 1/32 inch bit. So these features all together will just really enhance the overall Easel experience, and we're really excited to share them with you today. So one of the things we were trying to think about when we were going to announce these features is like, okay, how do we build a project that's really going to showcase what these features are and what they can do? Well, I, for some reason, got the idea that it might be fun to make like a bank. So I made this bank. This is my rainy day fund bank. And it's essentially just an inlaid piece of acrylic in 3/4 inch soft maple. And you can see that what I've done is I've engraved these shapes in the background. They're actually like raised up. It's kind of like Plinko on The Price is Right when you put coins in the bank. And then there's like a slot on the top that you can put the money in. So the reason this project is going to be good to showcase is because you have, for one thing, this is a really thick piece of material. So trying to cut this out with an 1/8 inch bit, or even, you know, like a 16th or a 32nd, like that's going to take forever. And you're very likely to break bits when you're trying to cut for a long period of time in a really thick piece of material. But not only is the material thick, but the pocket is also really deep. This pocket is actually 0.65 inches deep, which is just like 1/10 of an inch less than the whole width of the material. But I wanted to make it kind of fun by adding these raindrops in the background too. So tool-stage carving helped me out tremendously with this project because I could do a roughing cut to get all the pocket cleared out with a 1/4 inch bit. And then I moved in with an 1/8 inch bit and I was able to get these details. And then I went it one more time around with the 1/4 inch bit to cut this out. So we're gonna walk through how you can make a bank similarly, but the most important thing that we wanna show you guys is how these new features work in Easel and how you can really get the most of them. So let's get into Easel. Give me 1 second here as I share my screen with everybody. And one thing I did to just kind of accelerate this process a little is I tried to get a head start on the project early. So what I've done here is I've imported a chicken shape set to outlines. I do want to use tabs on this one because I don't want this piece to move at all while I'm carving. And I set up my material dimensions over here, selected a 1/4 inch bit and my material type. So all of this has already been done. Again, I just used the image trace feature to bring the chicken in. And then this is simply a circle that I've sized to 5.5 by 3.5 just to kind of fill this space. So already you can see some of the things that are different in Easel. There is down here a generate detailed preview button that shows up next to the simulate button. And you can see how incredibly crisp and detailed you can see your design now. Like look at that detail. So it's very easy for me to understand exactly what my project is gonna look like. And this happens whether you're using any kind of wood that we have here. Any of the materials that are in the drop down will all do this. Look at this. This is what Easel used to look like. This probably looks all too familiar to a lot of you. But the good news is that is no more with the 3D preview. So you can click on this Generate 3D Preview button. You can see right now it's working overtime to try and go ahead and generate that for us. It's probably because I am using a lot of energy trying to live stream this to everyone. So normally this works really quickly. And you can see here, if I simulate my tool paths, I can see exactly what my 1/4 inch bit is going to do. So normally this is what you would see, right? You would see just the action of the tool paths and kind of how that works. But this new feature down here, you can actually play the tool paths of your machine and see exactly what your machine is going to do and how it's going to move. So all of these red lines indicate the movement when your machine is not carving. So just standard machine movement. So here is the very first thing it did, right? It moved from the 0 position and it started carving down. Now you see if I had my material, I can get even a better detail as to what's going on here. I can see it lowering down each time. You know, it just started another pass. And then if I wanted to, I could speed it up to like 30 times faster than the standard speed, which is super cool. Or if I was feeling really like super, like I just want to get this over with, you can actually go ahead and scrub the entire animation. So you can just go ahead and see like, okay, is it gonna do the chicken first? Is it gonna do the bank belly first? And so this scrubber allows you to just play it however you want and manually control the speed. You can also just go to the end of the carve. You can go back to the beginning of the carve. So it's a really cool thing if you are worried about where your clamps are going to go, or if there's going to be a part of your design you want to make sure carves before the other part. You can go ahead and use this feature to really understand exactly what your machine is doing. So this is a really cool feature. It's already saved me so much on killing clamps. I know you guys know that I'm the clamp destroying queen. So this feature is really helpful for me to be able to see these rapid movements and understand, like, if I have to move a clamp during mid-carve or something like that, I can fully understand what's happening here. So those are two of the features that we're really happy to introduce. So first is the 3D high-def preview, which you can see like incredibly crisp designs, which is great. And then the second one here, if you click the simulate button, that generates these toolpath animations that you can use. So you can always hide your material here too, to just kind of preview what that might be like. And then anytime that you make a change over here in the 2D pane, it's going to go ahead and just clear those toolpaths. So that's just something to keep in mind, is anytime you want to see them, just click simulate, and you'll see as this project gets more detailed and more complicated, the 3D preview isn't going to kick in automatically. So sometimes you will have to press the button. Other times, like I said, it does come automatically. So just kind of something to keep in mind as we're working through this too, is that these things are buttons that you have to click, but the 3D preview sometimes generates automatically depending on how complex your design is. So now that we've got kind of like the starting block for our bank, I want to show you guys about the 2-stage carving. So to do 2-stage carving, you can see here that there's now a plus button next to the bits and the cut settings that allows you to plug in an additional bit. Now for this project, I'm going to be doing an inlay, and I kind of mapped this out a little bit before I started, and I found out that I'm going to be okay with just using an 1/8 inch bit. So for this one, since I'm using wood, I'm going to go ahead and go with the straight cut bit. Now you notice something changed when I did that. Right now, as soon as I added the detail bit, my outline converted to be the same width as the 1/8 inch bit. So whatever bit you use as the detail bit is going to be what your project does the cutout as. So the reason that does that is in a lot of cases, the cutouts are you know, we want it to have like a really clean finish. So the smaller your bit, the better the kind of finish you're gonna get along the edge of those cuts. But it's not really convenient for a project like this, where I want to cut this shape out as quickly as possible and I want to use my larger bit. So we're going to show how to do that at the end. But just something to keep in mind is that your detail bit will always be used on any kind of cutout or outline shapes. So if I were to just even add in a circle right now and I were to make it an outline, that outline is going to default to the default to the detail bit diameter. So if I get rid of my detail bit and I go back to just my 1/4 inch, you can see that my lines all changed as well. So just keep that in mind when you're designing projects, is your detail bit is going to be what the outside pass of your outlines is going to be registered in. All right, so I've got my bank, and like I said, what I did for my cloud was I basically did an inlay. So all this is the Inlay app being used to generate a slightly larger version of the acrylic cutout that I've done for the pocket. So I will say this particular project, we're gonna have a situation here where it's kind of one of those like, do as I say, not as I do, because my easel file got a little manipulated here and I had to cut out a lot of different clouds to get this shape to fit. So I'm gonna show you guys the right way to do it and not really show you how to do it this way that I did for this shape. Plus, as most people know, like I'm 100% obsessed with chickens. So this is gonna be the way in which I kind of get my little chicken love out into the world. So let me go ahead and share this project again. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna make sure that I have enough room for the inlay to fit down into this. So let me just go ahead and refresh my browser really quick and make sure. Oh, so if you are trying to find the new features in your Easel account, you may need to refresh your Easel browser, or you may need to log out and log back in. In most cases, a simple refresh just by using the refresh panel on your browser will do the trick. And then you should be able to see everything come to life. So it might not be there right away, but it will be there when you refresh your account. All of these features are live now, so you can go ahead and use them in Easel right now. You shouldn't have any difficulty with that. If you do, let us know, but a simple refresh of your browser should be able to handle that for you. Okay, so I've got my shape here. I want to make sure that my inlay pocket is a little bit larger than this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste the shape by using Command-C, Command-V, or Control-C, Control-V on your PCs if you have those. And I'm just gonna make these a little bit bigger. I also wanna make sure that my 1/8 inch bit can kind of get in there as well for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set this shape to 5.8 and 3.8. And now I'll just show you just so you guys can see. It's a little bit larger than my pocket. But if I did this, it's really not gonna be the best way to make an inlay. The best way to make an inlay, as we all know, is the Inlay Generator app. So for this one, since I am gonna be using my detail bit, I am going to keep the bit size at an 1/8 inch, and I'm just gonna use the standard tolerances for this as well. All right, so I've got my shapes. I wanna make sure I delete my original shape. I'm gonna pull this guy over and send him to the back. And then I'll just make sure that these two shapes align neatly so that I can see how those stack. And the last thing I'm gonna do, I don't need it to be quite that deep because the depth of my acrylic is only an 1/8 inch. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set the depth of my inlay pocket to be 1/8 of an inch. I'll get this out of here just so it doesn't cut my chicken's head off. So now you can see with this incredible high def preview that I've basically created a pocket here for my acrylic to set into. Now this is the cutout of the acrylic that I'm going to do. So right now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna copy and paste this into a new workpiece. So I'll plug it in over here, and I'll just make sure that I set these settings more or less correctly for now. This is just gonna be cut out with an 1/8 inch cut up, and I'll just make sure that I change it to acrylic. So when the time comes to carve this piece, I've already got it ready to go. I know that this is exactly what's going to fit in here. And now that I've got that done, I can go ahead and delete that piece from my work plane. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to add a little bit of more detail in here. So what I did was I thought, it's a nest egg, right? So that might be kind of a fun thing to do. So what I did is I thought it might be fun to do like these little eggs inside the belly of the chicken here. And I also thought it might be fun to add in like a $sign so that people know what that is. And so I set these in here. I made just like that. Oh wait, sorry, I want it to go through. So I'm gonna set this to the same depth as my pocket. Now I got like this cute little egg, which is kind of fun. And I'll just make some copies and I'll put those in there as well. Now you can see where this two-stage carve is really gonna come in handy, right? Because I will be able to cut out this big pocket, but still get the detail that I have in like these $signs. So if I didn't have the two-stage carving and I just had the 1/4" bit, you can see my design really doesn't look as cool as I want it to. I mean, sure, it works, I guess, but you know, I'm gonna have to really try to figure out a way to make the eggs bigger or not be as close to each other, or you know, there's just like a lot more finagling that you need to do if you're limited to only designing with one bit size in mind. So this is really helpful in being able to do more intricate things with your projects without sacrificing what your project looks like. So I'll go ahead, I'll add that 1/8" bit back in. And you can see that now I get the full detail of my $signs and everything's looking good. So the last thing I want to do with these eggs here is I don't want to set the depth to be quite so deep because I want to make sure that, you know, I'm able to actually get money into there, and I'm not sure it's going to be able to do it at that height. So I'm just going to lower this down a little bit so that the eggs don't pop out quite as much, and I can still get that detail without having that sort of plinko effect that I was talking about. So now that I've got that all set up, the other thing that I'm going to do is add in a slot at the top. So there's a couple different ways, and you guys can totally call me out on being not thinking through how a bank works. But what I did is I basically just added this little slot at the top of my wood so that the acrylic inlay has enough of a gap between where the bottom of the acrylic is and where the top of the wood is. So basically just made this little slot. Now you might say, like, Mo, like what happens when I save up $1 million in my bank and then I want to get it out of there? That's a great question. So I made my slot big enough that if I wanted to, I could just like dump this out and like, you know, my money is going to come out of the slot. That's helpful. I've also designed it so that my inlay of the acrylic fits pretty well, so that if I really wanted to just get my money all at once, I could pop this acrylic out and then pop it back in when it's done. So it's a tight fit, but I haven't sealed it with glue or anything. So that's one way that I've kind of gotten around the other answer of like how to make that work. But it's completely feasible to do another inlay and maybe do like a slot at the bottom where you just have a piece that fits in there as like a little plug, or you could even do something like on the back where you just have like a hole that acts as an inlay, and maybe you just like are able to take that in and out. So I'm not going to walk through the plug part of it because I think there are like a lot of ways that you can get around that, and it's kind of a cool creative challenge for you guys to figure out how you think that might work in Easel. But I'll just show you how I thought through my little slot at the top. So we will go back into Easel, and I'll just show that for you really quick. So what I did was I did a little bit of research because I don't know anything about coins. And if you want a half dollar bill or $half coin, you know, like a 50-cent piece, then this needs to be wider than 1 1/4 inches. So for the sake of simplicity, I just made it 1.3 to make sure that there's enough there to kind of work through. Now in terms of height, it doesn't matter too much, but you want to make sure that, you know, there's a way for the coins to get in and that, you know, you're able to get past this part of it here. So in terms of the depth, I also want to make sure that the depth is able to account for both the thickness of the acrylic inlay, which you can see here. This is kind of just like a nice visual. I want to make sure that this space here is going to be wide enough to accept the width of the coins. So my inlay is going to go on top, and then I'm going to have the hole between the pocket and the slot. So in order to do that accurately, I just went ahead and I made this 0.3 inches deep, which is great because if I know my acrylic is 1/8 of an inch, this is a little bit more than that, so there should be plenty of room for the coins to be able to drop in there. Now, the high diff preview, you can see, is kind of making some weird shapes here because of the way that I've layered these tools. So it's really helpful to try and figure out how to make the design work. So in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and send this all the way to the back. And you can see that that solves my problem with the cutout. So I'm definitely gonna be able to get the cutout of the shape so that the slot is at the top. But I'm getting some weirdness here with the inlay feature. So this layer here, because it is a higher height than the slot, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna move this shape to the back. And now you can see that my file is rendering correctly. So I've got enough shape or enough depth here. Let me get this right, okay. So you can see I can get my coins in here, the acrylic is gonna lay on top, and then I'm also gonna be able to make sure that I cut that out. So that's one way that I found the 3D preview to be incredibly helpful as I was designing this project, because it was kind of hard for me to figure out the layering of my different steps to figure out, okay, like what's gonna make the most sense for like what part needs to be on top of what and everything. So it's helpful as you're kind of planning the design to be able to really get a clear picture of exactly what your machine is going to carve. So the one last thing, because I feel like it helps, I'm just gonna add a little eyeball to my guy. I figure if I'm using an 1/8" bit to get those detail passes, I might as well make him have a little personality, or her, I guess, since she's laying money eggs. I'll just put this little eyeball in here. And again, the 3D preview can kind of help me see, like, okay, it's not gonna cut all the way around that, so maybe I just make my little circle a little smaller and move it in a place where it's gonna be a little more eyeball-like. There we go. So 3D preview is really helpful for kind of getting those little finesse things. You can see now if I simulate my toolpaths, that I get 2 sets of toolpaths here with 2-stage carving. So the first toolpath that you see is the light blue and the red. So the light blue and the red is going to indicate what's done with the roughing pass. So you can see it clears out this whole pocket and it clears out the majority of the slot. And the second toolpath you see is the dark blue, or like the purple color, and the green rapid movements. So this is showing you exactly what the detail bit is going to do. So let's just see if we can walk through this real quick. So I'll go ahead and speed this up. Actually, I'm just gonna scrub it. So all of this is done with my roughing pass, right? It's carving out the pocket. And then you can see the green rapid movements come in, and the dark blue toolpaths start coming in. And I'm able to start getting what my detail pass is doing. So the detail pass, as you can see, is going to go ahead and go all the way around all the shapes again, just to make sure that those edges are nice and clean and crisp and cleaned up based on what you've done with the roughing pass. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. And the other thing I wanted to show you with the tool paths relates to this, how I was talking about that the cutout is done with the detail pass. So the way that I get around that is once I've got everything all set up, so like my file is here, it's good, I'm happy with it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate this. And now that I've got it open in a new workpiece, I'm gonna delete everything except my outline. And then the only thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get rid of that detail bit. And now you can see my outline is going to cut with the 1/4" bit instead of the detail bit. And then when I go back into here, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete the outline so that all my parts are still here, but I'm gonna cut it out with the 1/4" bit. I hope that that wasn't too confusing. But this is how work pieces really come in handy when you're trying to customize your project almost entirely and really get your machine to work in the most efficient way and the safest way, and really like leaving the best possible product at the end. So as long as I don't go moving anything, the way I would carve this out is I would carve this file first with my 1/4" bit and then my 1/8" bit. So I'd start my carve, do my 1/4" bit. After that carve is done, I would lock my motors, I would change my bit to an 1/8" bit, and I would carve the rest of this file. There is a Support Center article on our website that allows you to get a little bit more help about doing two-stage carves. So the cool thing here about two-stage carves is that some of these screenshots are a little bit outdated, but you can see like majority of these things are all still the same. When you're going through the walkthrough, you'll just need to confirm whether you're doing the roughing pass or the detail pass. So the carve walkthrough will walk you through all of these steps to make sure that the pass that the machine is doing is either going to be your roughing pass or your detail pass. So that's really important to make sure that when you are going through the final walkthrough, that you are using the correct pass. All right, so I did that. I cut out this with both my roughing pass and my detail pass. The next thing I would do is I would put my 1/4 inch bit back in and I would cut out the entire outline shape of the project. And then that would free up the wood portion of my project. So once that's done, I would have basically like the whole shape, the pockets all carved, and that's like what I've got. And then the next thing I would do is I would just put my 1/8 inch bit back in, put my acrylic down. When you're using acrylic, remember, don't use tabs. It's much easier with acrylic to use something like double stick tape to keep your material in place because it's such a thin material in this case, and it's also very brittle that there's more likelihood of not only your bits breaking, but also the material coming loose and breaking off, and then you've got to deal with that kind of an issue where you know, your piece is now damaged. So I would recommend using the tabs for the wooden simply because it's so thick. You really don't want that coming loose at all. But for something like the double-sided or something like the acrylic, you could definitely use a double-sided tape. So it might not always seem like the best thing to be able to two-stage carving, right? You've got to swap bits in and out, and you've got to, you know, really make sure your machine is always homed to the exact same spot when you're doing multiple stage carves. But it really opens up the number of things that you can do and how long it takes you to do those things. For me, I would much rather have to rehome the machine to my starting point and then carve with a new bit and change out that bit when it's necessary. I would much prefer that than having to carve this entire project with an 1/8 inch bit. I mean, I would probably need to sleep at the office if I tried to do something like that because it would take a really long time. So it's a great way to save time. It's a great way to get the most out of your bits because if I were to try to do this all with an 1/8 inch bit, that bit is not going to have a very long life. It's going to dull quicker because I'm asking it to do things that are just a little bit beyond its capacity in terms of longevity. You know, so every bit goes dull eventually. The more you use your bit, the quicker it's going to dull. So I would rather use a bit that's optimized to clear out a lot of material all at once or cut through really thick material. I would rather use a larger bit to do that than use a smaller bit where it's going to take a long time. It's really going to wear down those flutes and kind of just bring the whole thing down in quality too. So that's kind of the gist of what we wanted to share with you guys. I hope everyone refreshed their browsers and was able to get those new features in Easel. They're very cool, and the whole experience for me has just been loads better, being able to completely visualize what is going to happen in my project and how to really layer the different elements to make sure that everything comes out crisp and clear and exactly the way that I envisioned it. It was kind of hard to do that with some of the other previews. I know that people are, so I know that people are adding in questions and comments and stuff in the chat, so you can feel free to go ahead and keep doing that. If you have a question, hopefully we can get it in the next few minutes here and I can answer it on the air for you. The other thing I just wanted to emphasize is that we here at Inventables, we really care about Easel, and we think Easel is the best way to get people using 3D carving and introducing them to how easy it is to bring your design from an idea in your head to something that you can physically hold in your hand and really take with you and give to others and things like that. And Easel, being a free web-based software, it's accessible. It's there for anyone to use. Even if you don't have a machine, you can log into Easel right now for free and do everything that I've just shown you. And that is a really cool thing, and that's something that's really important to us. And as Inventables continues to grow as a company, we will continue adding new features to Easel. We will continue updating it and making it accessible for you. I did have a question that came in, it looks like, about how to zero between jobs. So there's a couple different ways that people do this. If you have homing switches, you can certainly use those. That's one of the easiest ways to home. If you're always starting in the bottom left corner, or if you've set up your G-code to go to a certain point. The way that I like to do it is, let me grab some material. So this is like just a piece of wood, right? And let's say I wanted to carve into this, but I didn't necessarily like want to start my project down here. You can always draw a dot on your project that's maybe like off the area, and you can use that to zero your bit to that area each time. So when you change in the bit for both 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch, just always zero to that bit. Now, if you have the X controller and you have the Z probe, that is by far the easiest way you can home your machine to the right spot. So that will make sure it's always at the right depth for the Z axis, and that you're always being able to get to the right spot.
Between the roughing pass and the finishing pass.
Yeah, so when you're homing between the roughing pass and the finishing pass, I like to use the dot method to make sure that my bit always comes back to the right spot. So that's one easy way to do it. The other thing is, remember, when your machine finishes, it always comes back to the same spot that it started. So you can lock your motors, change the bit right there, and then you will have to go through the machine carve walkthrough again to be able to set up that homing again. So each time you change the bit and you start the roughing pass and then you start the detail pass, you will have to home your machine. So you can use the Z probe to do that. You can use a dot on your material to make sure that you start and stop in the same spot every time for both the roughing pass and then again for the detail pass. Or you can use, like I said, like you can use homing switches to make sure that your machine is always in the correct spot. You do need to make sure that you use the same 0 point for both your roughing pass and your finishing pass. That's really important, because otherwise the way the machine generates the tool paths is going to be different if it's thinking that it's somewhere in space that it's not. So that's why it's important to make sure you do zero your machine from the roughing pass, again for the detail pass, and then in this particular case, again for the cutout pass. If you guys have any other questions, you can feel free to be active on our forum. We're always there answering questions for people, and the community is super helpful with that as well. You can send an email to us at help@inventables.com, or you can give us a call, and our customer success team is happy to help with that as well. So you should all have access to these features right now. We are populating our support center this afternoon with articles that will tell you more and include some screenshots and GIFs to kind of walk through exactly how to use these features in more detail. So you can always check those resources out if you have any other questions. So that's what we have for you today. I hope you guys are excited about these new features as we are. We're so happy to share them with you, and I hope you guys really get a lot out of them and create some really cool stuff. I'm curious to see if anyone comes up with some cool solutions for how you can maybe add a plug onto your bank, because that would be critical to see how people work through that particular problem. But that's everything we have for you today. Again, thank you so much for watching, and keep carving.